it's happening on Fiberchats group on Ravelry. It's the whole year, and there's a whole bunch of tutorials for each one of those things. And I also posted interviews with the designers. There's an interview with Paula Kibiltis. There's an interview with Monique Boonstra, who did the Minagami. And they talk about like all the tips and tricks for Shetland Lace. So there is like whole playlist on Shetland Lace, Mr. Nidalong.
I mean, there's playlist on everything you like. You know, if you like, like she said, macrame, there's an artist for that. If you like knitters, if you like Stephen West, he's there. It's just like, it's amazing. Your library of guests is just so much fun. And like you said, they're from all over the world. Didn't you say you had somebody that was traveling like, she was in India.
Yeah, Sita Lagos. So she's actually South African artist, fiber artist. And I don't want to call her knitter because she knits, she crochets, she spins, everything, she does embroidery, she does beading of some fabric. So she's like super talented. She knows how to spin yarn. She's using spinning for her meditation. And she's so lovely and so knowledgeable. And she actually has her own YouTube channel.
If you don't remember, I'll put it. You'll tell me and then I'll post it.
Shawl knitter. I want to say unplugged, but like I can't.
Right. You know what fascinated me with her is that she has a small backpack with like barely anything.
Yeah.
You know, because she has to carry everything with her all the time. So her house is basically all she has is in that backpack, but she always has yarn.
Yeah.
And she also finds yarn, and people give her yarn, you know, when she meets people. Anyway, you should go and see it. It's fascinating. Listen, I think this one is my favorite.
So this is called the third one. So it's also by Monique Boonstra, the same one that you're wearing. And she has a collection of shawls that she's thinking of like continuing. So she has the second one, the third one. The second one was a square shawl. This is a rectangular shawl, and then the fourth one is a triangular shawl. So they all like different shapes. And this one is my absolute favorite of all times. And it also has this tree, which is like, when you get to the tree, you know, you sort of learn Shetland things.
Oh, wow. I wish you could. This is the lightest thing I mean.
Yeah, this is 72 grams.
72 grams, look at that. And the color also is, I've never seen a color like that. It's, at the beginning you think it's white, then you look at it and it's that
like pale
splash of lavender, lilac.
Yeah.
It is gorgeous. I mean, that's the way I imagine a cloud on an evening of a sunset, you know, in the Caribbean, something like that.
Yeah,
gorgeous.
I love this show. This
gorgeous.
Is like one of my favorites.
You're such an amazing, very talented knitter. Really, you are. So, you know, I see all those interviews. You're doing, as I said, an amazing job interviewing, but you've never been interviewed yourself. And I'm sure people are I am curious about you.
Oh, ask away.
So where you were born? You weren't born in the United States.
No, I was born in Uzbekistan. So that was like part of Soviet Union back then. And my parents were hydraulic engineers. So we actually traveled like all my childhood. So I was born in Uzbekistan, but I didn't live there long. And then we moved to Siberia, and I grew up in Siberia in like the tiniest little village. There was like 10,000 people.
That's crazy.
And like the next village was like 2 hours drive.
Of course. So wait a minute. Wait. Until what age were you living in
Siberia?
Yeah.
I lived there until I finished high school. So most of my school years. And then
so your like constructive years were in Siberia.
Right. And then we moved to Moscow for a while. I went to engineering school in Moscow. And then as soon as I was about to graduate, Soviet Union fell apart. And there was no engineering works. And it was just like the whole job market was like non-existent. So there was a program that was sending female engineers to get an MBA, and that's how I ended up here. And then I met my husband, and then I stayed here. So it's like, yeah,
wow, wow. So how is it? Tell us, how is it? Did in Siberia that you learned how to knit?
I haven't started knitting until 5 years ago.
I cannot. I mean, really.
But my grandmother was extremely crafty. She was a seamstress. She could knit. She could crochet, like more simple things, not like Shetland lace, but
right.
she did. And she taught me, like one summer, she taught me the knit stitch and purl stitch and cast on. I don't think I even knew how to cast off. So I knitted probably for like a week and a half.
Mm-hmm.
And then I came back home from the summer vacation, back to Siberia with like some yarn and needles. And my mom just rolled her eyes and said, like, just go play. Like, what are you doing? And that was the end of my knitting. And then 5 years ago, a friend of mine was having her fourth and, as she assured, the last baby. And she said, I never had baby shower. And I said, well, let me throw you a baby shower. And I was thinking, like, what can I make for the baby that is going to be something like more special? So I went on YouTube. And I was like, well, maybe I should try to knit. And I found some booties and I made these booties. And then I never stopped, like, since that day.
I love your story. That's so cool.
And I feel like my grandma would be like very proud,
for
you know?
Sure. I think like really, if you put the seed, it doesn't matter if it, so many people are coming to the store and I ask them, do you knit, do you crochet, and then we begin to chat and I ask their story. There is a lot of common denominator in the fact that they say, well, I, began to knit when I was really little. My grandma taught me, my mom, but whatever. I haven't knitted in like 30 years. And now I think I'm going to take it back. And then they say, but I'm a total beginner. But they're not. It's like riding on a bicycle.
No, it's definitely this like memory, like of some sort, like genetic almost memory of some sorts. Because like I started within like months, I was knitting brioche. Within 6 months, I was knitting Shetland
you're
lace.
Extremely smart. I mean, I've been knitting for a long time, and I'm not doing brioche. That's another thing that you have to teach me, by the way.
Oh, you're totally doing brioche. You know what? 2023 resolution, you're doing brioche.
I do. I want to do brioche. I also want to learn Shetland lace, but I have a feeling that's going to take me a little longer. Brioche, especially if it's one color brioche, I think I can do it. 2-color brioche is going to take me a little time, but that's okay. I'll learn.
I feel like the main skill that you can learn in knitting or crocheting or any other kind of fiber arts is recognizing your mistakes.
Yeah.
Because if you can spot a mistake early enough, you can learn how to fix them, and then you're unstoppable. Like, if, because we all make mistakes. There's like absolutely nobody who is like, even if you knit for 60 years, you'll still make a mistake.
And I think as adults, when the difference between a kid and an adult is if you take a kid, it's very easy to teach kids how to knit and to crochet because they're used to make mistakes.
Right.
They don't expect, you don't expect
perfection.
No, you don't expect a kid to be perfect, and they know they're not going to. They're sponges. They're not scared of making mistakes. We lose that as we get adults.
Yeah.
And I see so many people, and in crochet too, they're freaking out if they make a mistake. And in crochet, it's not as hard as knitting.
Right. You just pull and it's
like... And then in knitting, it's a little more stressful. But once you understand the way the stitch function, then you can fix your mistakes. But I think that in anything that you want to learn, you have to be ready to make mistakes. It's not like a computer game where you can just learn, like kids do today in 5 minutes to be, really good.
Right. Well, you know what I tell like all the people who knit with me? I tell them, stop often and admire your knitting. Because, not because first of all, it brings you joy, right?
Yeah.
You see, to touch the fabric, like, it relaxes you, it brings smile to your face. Yeah. But also you will spot those mistakes earlier. If you look at your knitting, if you learn how to, like, if you look how even it is, right? You see that something is off.
Right.
And if you're like 2 rows above it, it's easy to fix. If you are 100 rows behind it, it's becoming something, more complicated.
Yep. I cannot stop looking at this thing. It's gorgeous. So you decided you're going to knit again, and then how did you get to YouTube? How did you say, I'm going to interview now?
It sort of started with Instagram. So once I was doing knitting, more and more knitting, I don't have like really knitters in my life that I know. So majority of people, if I talk about knitting, they just slowly, they try not to make eye contact and slowly back away.
They like you.
So, like, I mean, there is like that much my husband and my children can hear about knitting, right? So then I would post something on Facebook. Like, Facebook was my first platform, social media platform. So I would post something with knitting. And the comments I would get, because mind you, like everybody who was my friends on Facebook weren't knitters, would be like, oh my god, like I wish I had that kind of time. Or like, how much can you do of these things? And like, what on earth do you do with all those shows, right? So it was like a lot of not negativity necessarily, but there was not a lot of support either. So I decided to start Instagram just for my knitting and do it sort of like like a diary of my knitting, to have like when I started the project, when I finished the project. So it would give me like the idea of dates and like sort of like remind me of what I did last year and see how you progress also, right? Because you can see how like your knitting becoming, or crocheting, like becoming better and better with years, right? So I started that and I got some sort of followers, like people who were passionate about fiber art. And then I was thinking like, I have all these people who follow me, but like I don't really know them. Like, what if I went live with them and I was asking some questions and I would get to know them and we would engage, we would become better friends, right?
That's what I love about you. You're curious.
So I asked, there was a designer from Shetland actually that we became friends with. She doesn't do lace, she does Fair Isle and like stranded. So I asked her like, Alison, would you want to do that? And she had a total panic attack. She was like,
Okay. Maybe it was too long for one piece, and then we'll do it again. So go back to where you were. Where were we?
Yeah, with Josh.
Yes.
So he said, yeah, like, let me just finish my cake and we can go. So we went on and I didn't even know how to go live. It was like, he was all flustered. I didn't know what I'm doing. And I didn't know much about him. So it was sort of like feel and go kind of thing. And I think it was like the first one was 15, 20 minutes, something like that. But once we were done, Alison Randall, the designer that I told you from Shetland, she texted me and she said, well, you know what? I saw how you do it. So let's do it tomorrow. Nice. So that's how it started. So I started on Instagram and I did, I think, 10 or 11 episodes on Instagram. And then my son came home and he used to work for YouTube and Google. And he came home and he said, listen, it's all very cute what you're doing here, but you're on the wrong platform. Nobody does interviews on Instagram for an hour. Nobody's listening on Instagram. You have to move to YouTube. So I had to figure out how, that was the extent of his help. So I had to figure out how to upload everything from Instagram to YouTube, how to edit it. So that's where my youngest kid actually came helpful, because he taught me how to edit videos. He taught me about the equipment.
My kids did too.
And then I asked him, how do you know all of that? And he's like, I don't know, I just know.
Yeah.
You know. So he was the one who like put me onto it. And so yeah, you can see that first interview with Josh. It's episode number 1, and it's totally like it's really like endearing to watch it sometimes. Like I go back and I watch it just because to remind myself like how far
I do that too. But I cringe too, because I look at so I thought, it was like 4 or 5 years ago I began YouTube.
Yeah.
And I never took out my video. I know that some YouTubers take their video on their first
one
I keep because everything. They're embarrassed. And I keep everything too, just to remind the journey that I did and how I think it's really interesting.
But plus, I feel like because I had all these people trust me with their story, I can't take it out just because I didn't do the best job, because I still want them to be part of that library.
Yeah.
And the breakthrough for me was when I decided to ask Hazel Tyndall to be a guest of my channel. I've been a huge fan of Hazel Tyndall. I mean, she's one of the fastest people in the world in knitting. And she's an incredible Fair Isle designer from Shetland and instructor. She's teaching in Shetland Wool Week.
She does continental knitting?
She does English actually. Yeah, she's knitting with the knitting belt, which is like another way of knitting. Anyway, so like I was a huge fan of hers, and but I never talked to her. Like I never had any kind of communication. And I said, you know what? I'm just gonna write her a letter. So I wrote her a letter, and I said, dear Miss Tyndall, I'm such a huge fan, and I'm doing this thing, and I would love to have you talk to me. And she said, oh, I'm a huge fan of your lace. Yeah, I would love that. And I was like, oh my God, Miss Tyndall knows me.
See, that's a fan moment I had with you.
Right. So that's how, like, it gave me sort of this braveness, I guess, to like approach people that I don't know. Because at the beginning, it was all the people that I had some sort of relationship with.
Right.
It would be like people I talked to on Instagram, people I communicated before. And then I said, like, well, why would I stop there? Mm-hmm. So I started approaching people I never knew, right? People that I just saw their pictures on Instagram or their videos, and I thought, oh my God, like they're so talented. So I would just send an email, and 2 times out of 3 they would ignore me, but some wouldn't, So
mailman.
Like I would approach people that I didn't know,
right,
and just say, like I have this channel, and I would love to interview you for this channel, and some.
You said 2/3 says you saying
right,
no,
like,
but
I mean,
they
not necessarily even say no, but like people would just ignore those messages or not see the messages, But then some people would be very enthusiastically happy about it. It took me a month to convince Stephen West to come to my channel because
I loved watching this.
Well,
because he doesn't give a lot of interviews.
He has a bunch of interviews on YouTube, and I wanted to ask him different questions. Yes, I didn't like the questions that were asked because majority of I was like a huge fan. I'm still am of Stephen West, right? But I didn't want the fangirl kind of interview.
What's your favorite color?
Right. Like I wanted to know like him as a business person. Yes. I wanted to see like why he was so successful. And I think my interview like showed that.
Yes.
And the funny part was that after my husband watched the interview, which is like very rare for anybody in my family to actually watch the whole thing.
Same as me.
And he watched it, and he said, like the first 40 minutes, Stephen was very upright, and then you could see he's like leaning into the camera, and he was like having a good time. So
that's your magic.
Yeah. So that was another memorable interview. But the thing is, like, it's not about how famous somebody is, because sometimes like the most wonderful stories come from the most unexpected sources.
Absolutely.
Like one of the people I interviewed is a New Zealand artist, Grant Mahi. Grant had like 200 people on his Instagram, but that guy can create like the most amazing things. So he's part Maori and he's part Scottish, living in like the tiniest village in New Zealand.
Nice.
And he basically spent like years learning how to weave with flax. So he harvests flax. He's showing you how like he dyes it and how he weaves with it.
To New Zealand.
Oh my God, I would love that. And he's a hairdresser and a cake decorator. So, like, imagine visiting him.
Oh my God.
That's going to be delicious, and you're going to look
They're going to roll us back down to the airplane.
You know what? It would be worth it.
Right? Oh, we should. That's amazing.
And it's also, like, creates a lot of connections because, like, people who come to my channel, they become friends. And then they would email me and they would be like, you should interview this person. Yes. Like, I really like this artist. Have you ever looked at that person, what they create? So a lot of people who are guests of my channel come from being recommended from somebody I interviewed.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Or even like people who just watch the channel, they would suggest me like, oh my God, like, have you seen this guy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And can I ask you what was your favorite interviews? Of all the interviews that I know it's a tough question, but you have one that just like, for whatever reason, it can be that just marked you, that just like stayed with you?
I mean, one of the most impactful interviews for me was this Elizabeth Lovick. So Elizabeth Lovick is a Shetland lace designer. I mean, she's a knitwear designer in general, but she did a few books on Shetland lace. And the first shawl I ever knitted, Shetland lace shawl, was from her book, from the cover of her book. And I just went to the local library and I was thinking, like, I'm going to take some books on Shetland lace. Right. Well, they had one. And that book had that shawl on the cover. And I thought, oh, that's pretty, so I'm going to try that. Right. Without realizing that Shetland lace is supposed to be difficult and has the reputation of being difficult, I was like, well, what can
I like it, I want to make it.
Right. And so that's how I started with Shetland lace. So when she agreed to be on my channel, it was like meeting Elvis.
Yeah.
Like talking about not fangirling, like I couldn't help myself. Half of the interview, I'm just sitting there and saying, "Oh my God, I love you." So that was just like really an honor to have you on my channel, you know. Mm-hmm. And then I had so many like really like amazing artists, and sometimes it's about how incredible, like how creative they are. Sometimes it's like this immediate connection that you meet the person, and like you and I, it's like we became friends like the second we say hi, know. It's just like that feeling that like you found somebody who is like who has the same passion and the same love for what we do, you know. So like some people that like I consider my best friends now came from that channel, that's like crazy. Meeting on Instagram, and then I would meet them in real life. Like for me, I went to Vogue meeting last February. Yeah. Oh my God, like it was like Disney World for everybody else.
That's the way I've never been to any of these, and I want to go. You told me that.
We're going this year.
We're going to Rhinebeck. And that's the way I imagine it. I cannot imagine the way I get when I go into one yarn store. Right. So it must be really overwhelming, though.
No, it's not even that. But like the thing about Vogue specifically, it's very full with like international stars. That's so it's not just people from the US. It's people. There were like people from Australia. There were people from Europe. So it was like people who I thought I'll never meet in my life, like
and
in real life. And they came to Vogue meeting, and not only they came to Vogue meeting, they saw me and they stopped me to say hi, and we were having drinks, we were spending time together, and it was like I knew these people all my life. You know? It was like absolutely incredible.
It's really fascinating. You just did this. You created that community, and you made all those friends, really in those last 5 years and you began 5 years ago, so you.
No, but you know what? That's the funny part. That if somebody told me that knitting is gonna take such a huge part of my life, right? And like, I wake up thinking of fiber arts. I'm going to sleep thinking of yarn, and places I want to visit, and it's all fiber arts connected, right? And it's like things that I wanna try, places I wanna visit, things I wanna learn. It's all about fiber arts. Like if somebody told me 6 years ago that that's going to be my life, I would laugh.
Where were you 6 years ago?
I was doing construction design, working some crazy hours.
That's crazy. What a change.
But I think we all sort of have this inside fiber geek inside of us, right? Like where like I used to do like cross stitching like years ago. Yeah. So there's like always, I was always creative somehow. It just like, it never
needed to be creative. You always had a way to.
I feel like just knitting like finally clicked to the point when it's like it became my whole life, And I know it sounds funny, but it's like, it is,
That's going to be, I'm building my website now. And on my website, I have the Unreal Stitch. And then underneath, I wrote, Unleash Your Creative Mojo. Because that's what it is. You have it inside of you, and you just unleash it with whatever, with your knitting, with your Shetland lace, and you meet just. But I like your story. I really do, because how did you do during the COVID?
Oh, it was the best.
That's funny. Us knitters, that's what people say. I had so much time to knit. I had so much time to crochet.
It was so beautiful because I had my knitting. Like, I didn't have to have that withdrawal from the society. I was living like my
Through
life.
Zoom.
And thank God for Zoom. Like, honestly, like, because without it, it wouldn't be possible. But I met so many like incredible people over the COVID, right? Because they were home and they were available. They had some time to talk to me. So like I was meeting some like wonderful designers and yarn dyers through COVID. And
it's funny. I had the opposite experience because, I was posting my channel on my YouTube channel was doing so well, and then COVID happened and it shook me to the core. It did something to me, and my creativity juice just was gone.
Well, if you watch my channel long enough, there is one of the questions that I ask a lot of do you ever run out of ideas? Do you ever run out of motivation?
Yeah.
What do you do like if you do lose your mojo? What do you do when you have creative burnout? I actually had Dr. Srini Pillay on my channel. He's a Harvard psychiatrist. And we talked about that. How do you deal with burnout? How do you revive yourself? How do you deal with the negativity, with negative comments, with people criticizing your work? How do you deal with, like, if people in your family don't support you, right? Like, if they thinking you're wasting your time and like you could have applied yourself so much better, right? So it's really valid conversation. And I actually go to his interview almost monthly just to listen back to it. And like,
I didn't listen.
I'll send you the link. I mean, honestly, like, if there is one interview that I recommend, I actually send it to all the people I interviewed because it's so common to have this, especially for creative people, to go through like highs and lows, right? Like you posting a video one day and it getting gazillion views, and then you're posting something that you really put your heart and soul in the next day, and there is like crickets, right? Nothing, no reaction. And so to deal with it and like to consistently, because we all talk about like you have to be consistent, right? You have to do something all the time. You have to post all the time. You have to do reels. You have to do this, And it takes a lot of you. It takes a lot of your energy. And sometimes you just, especially like for designers out there, right? There are some big names that doesn't matter what they post, suddenly they like, it's a hit.
Right.
And you're gonna spend so much time and like thinking about the design and testing it and grading it and publishing it and advertising it, and then you're gonna sell 3 copies.
Yeah.
And it's very disheartening, and it's very hard to go back again and continue doing the same thing, right? Because like it just was a total crush. Like, how do you do with it? But the thing is, like, because I'm in the unique position when I became friends with a lot of people that I interviewed. So I see it, it's not one glimpse into their life. It's not 1 hour that we talk about. It's a continuous conversation. It's continuous relationship. So often when I talk to people who like you guys perceive as like top designers and stars of the show, right? They dealing with the same negativity, they dealing with the same unknown. Like even when I interviewed Stephen West after the knit along, like he came second or third time on my channel, and I was like, how do you like how did it go for you? Like, do you think it was a success, right? And there's like thousands of people who need that show during the mystery knit along. And he was exhausted. Like you could see he was not the same Stephen that I interviewed in April. And he was like, the hardest thing is like when somebody just like gets the first clue and they're like, oh, I hate it. I never gonna do it. So it's like you think that he is this super upbeat, like easygoing guy who doesn't have any difficulties in his life, but like he's dealing with it.
Like, he has the same issues that we do. That's interesting. Well, I definitely get burnt out after 3.5 years on my channel, and I'm sure that a lot of my subscribers are wondering where I was and stuff like that. So I thought that maybe you could interview me one day on your channel.
I would love to have you on my channel,
but because I feel like I owe them an explanation. But I was definitely, I can totally understand. It was some of the reason why I left, and I needed it. And I needed for myself, I don't know what, I'm going to watch this interview. What's his name, Dr. Srini Pillai? Yeah, I'm going to go and watch it. I know that for myself, I needed a break. I needed a total break.
But you know what? Like sometimes you have to give yourself permission to live your life.
Yeah.
And do what's best for you, right?
Exactly.
And at that time, it was best for you to disappear for a bit.
I felt so guilty about it. It was terrible because my community was so wonderful, really.
But your community is still probably so wonderful, right?
Yes, but I was
I'm
sure
sure
that
it's
she was.
gonna be like the same. You know what?
I didn't know
they
that
appreciate you, and they appreciate what you taught them.
I was like, there's no way they're going to wait for me. If I ever go back, I'm going to lose all my subscribers. I'm going to, and I didn't. And I hope that now that I'm coming back, they still will be there. I think, they will. And I really appreciate that. But
what's my favorite thing about my channel?
What?
Is when I have somebody, I invite, and it was like not one and not two and not 10 people who I would invite to my channel, and they would be, well, I don't know if I'm worthy to be on your channel. I'm nobody. I'm just meeting home, right? And I was like, well, I'm interviewing people who are interesting to me, and I find you interesting, so it's good enough for me,
Right.
So to me, it's like, it's incredible when I talk to people and I would ask them a question like, well, have you ever thought about doing this or that, right? And they would be like, oh no, like this is, I don't have time for that. This is not something I'm interested.
The imposter syndrome.
Right. And then 2 weeks later, I would get DM and they would be like, well, guess what I'm doing? So there was this guy that I interviewed who was, he had some designs in crochet. And then he went to school. He was doing nursing school. So when I interviewed him, he just like recently became a knitter, basic. Like he was mostly crocheter, then he got into knitting. And I said, well, you have experience of publishing patterns for crochet. Are you thinking of designing in knitting? And he was like, oh, absolutely, I don't have time for that. It's a lot of work and I don't think it's going to happen. A week later, he's texting and he's like, guess what I'm doing? I'm publishing my first design. It's in the process of testing now. And it's like, and I have so many people like Imbal Gross. So I met her on Instagram somewhere and I was like, she had her very first design published. And I said, I want to interview you. And she was like, I'm not a designer. I just starting and I don't know what I'm doing. And I said, okay, like let's have that interview. And we had the best time during the interview. She was published in Vogue Knitting magazine. She is working on her own designs. That girl is unstoppable. And I met her at Vogue. We were inseparable.
I think that knitting and the community that you create or that I create or that other YouTubers are creating is something so important. I think as human we really need that push. We need to, there is something inside of you, right, that is kind of brewing and it needs somebody else to make it come out.
Well, it's and also like it's such a great feeling when you collaborate with others, right? So like I interviewed for Human Southwest Knits, which was a serious idea I did on my channel. Nice. It was like the idea was to showcase not just designers and yarn dyers, but actual people who participate in knit along, right? So I did this series called Human Southwest Knits. So one of the people who was part of that was a yarn dyer from Woolen Women Fibers, Andrea.
Yeah.
So it was 10 minutes conversation, right? It was just like 10 minutes conversation. Then one day recently, I'm going on Instagram and I see her and she has a twin sister and her mom. They're like 3 of them are doing this business. So I see them going live and I was like, oh, let me see what's happening, right? And I'm clicking on live and they're like, oh my God, Irina, like welcome. And they're talking about creating a knit along, make along. So it's for both crocheters and knitters. And it's a shawl make along where you can do any kind of shawl you want from any kind of yarn you want.
See, I could
so it's like totally
right now.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this is part of that,
Oh,
by
that's
the
what
way.
you're knitting. I was going to ask
So
what's on
I
the
was
needle.
like just listening to their life, and I said, "Oh, that sounds like a fun thing to do."
Uh-huh.
And I'm thinking, I'm always knitting shawls. Like some sort of shawl is always on my needles, right? So I was like, okay, it's gonna start end of April, and it's gonna be until end of May.
Uh-huh.
At that time, I'm definitely gonna need some kind of shawl.
Right.
They don't have any limitations, so it can be like any shawl.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I'm gonna join. And Andrea said, "Oh, I'd love to send you some yarn." And I was like, who can say no to yarn, right?
Mm-hmm.
So she asked me to DM her. I DM'd her afterwards. And she said, "Well, what colors are you thinking? Like, do you have a shawl in mind?" And I said, "I have no idea, but like, how about foreskeins? These are the colors, right?" And I told her what I seen. She sent me the yarn. So I got the yarn for free. Disclosure, full disclosure, right? I posted on my Instagram and I was like, can't even like behold how like excited I am,
Right.
People start asking immediately like, what is this yarn, where can we get it? So like another friend of mine who is also on my channel, Steven Weber, he has also his own YouTube channel. So he saw my yarn and he was like, "Oh my god, like I've been looking for yarn like those exact colors."
See, that's the
for
way
like
it
months.
happened. And you actually linked me with them
Right.
too.
So he texted Andrea. Andrea texted me, and she's like, "Do you mind if I'll put it as a kit in my store?" And I was like, "Of course not. Like, go for it." So I personally know 3 people who ordered that yarn just because they saw it on my channel. So it benefits her channel, right? It benefits her store. She's promoted. I'm getting a free gift out of it. Thank you, Andrea. you know, and like, but it's such a community building thing because like just because I talked about it, so many people who follow me heard about this make along, and now they're part of that make along, and they're gonna be the clients, and they're gonna buy yarn in the future.
It's really a symbiosis between designers and YouTubers. It is a symbiosis. You know, there's no YouTube without the subscribers,
Right.
without people that watch, and I think it's so beautiful. And also designers that publish books. You know, they want you to crochet or knit their patterns. They want to see what yarn you use. The tester, the knit testers, how do you call that?
Test knitters.
Test knitter, the opposite. Test knitters, it's a symbiosis between designer and them. And I love that. I really love that. It's a whole ecosystem of
And it's
fiber loving people.
Right.
It
And
is
it's also
so
like,
nice.
you know, but the thing about test knits, and that's actually another reason, like a friend of mine and I, we started the group on Facebook. I told you, Knitters Gonna Knit. So the reason for that particular group was because we would like try to post something about, like I would post about my channel, he would post his patterns, and the post would be taken down because we are self-promoting. And I was like,
on Facebook, you
on
can
Facebook,
self-promote.
right? So I was like, let's create a group that's gonna encourage self-promotion. Forget about forbid self-promotion, encourage it, right?
Right.
So what started happening, because people were putting their patterns, test calls, the yarn dyers were posting their colors, they began all this collaboration between people in the group. So the yarn dyers would get the designers to design their yarn. The designers would get testers. The testers, people who wanted to test and could never get a test, were getting the opportunity to test knit. So it's like, it's a beautiful thing, you know? And it raises the whole community. It helps everyone, you know, it promotes all these businesses.
Love it.
So yeah.
You're just like, you're a businesswoman.
But
no matter what you do, you'll always be like the
but
same
you know
way.
it comes from the right place, because I want my friends to see what my friends are doing, right? I want to see like what talented people there. I want to see like what
you're
beautiful
a matchmaker.
I like that.
Right?
I like that. And I love introducing people like to each other. So
yeah,
like,
you did. So many people already. How long do I know you? A week? Can you believe it?
Yeah, it feels like forever, right?
That's nuts. It feels like forever. I think we met in a previous life. Probably. That's just not possible. But anyway, you know that all my family is from Russia.
Oh, really?
Well, actually, half of it is from Ukraine, and half of it is from Russia.
Yeah.
Nuts, huh?
Well, I'm about to interview a kid who is organizing. So you know how like okay when the war in Ukraine started,
Yeah.
and we like a little bit off tangent, but
No,
when the war in Ukraine started,
Yeah.
everybody was concerned about it, and everybody was doing something about it, and then more things happened, and there was like earthquake and political things and whatever, and it became to the point when like people are numb to certain events, right?
Yeah.
And like less and less coverage in media
Human
means
nature.
less
Yeah.
people think about it. So he was thinking about all the kids with PTSD, you know, dealing with all the
Yeah.
problems of the war, and he wanted to create a project that will bring attention to that.
Yeah.
And so him and six other knitters from different continents are creating this scarf that each one is gonna knit a foot of scarf, and then they're gonna combine it together, and they're gonna do a knit along, because each one is gonna publish a little pattern for that portion of the scarf. So they're gonna do a knit along, and they're doing also a fundraiser to help these kids with PTSD, like deal with their.
Do you have a link? Can we post it in the?
We're gonna share the link.
You know, I did that with my community. I actually lost my niece. She was 14, and she took her life. It was already, what, 5 years ago? No, 4 years ago. And I felt like I needed to do something. So I asked my community to send to Granny Square. And I needed the support. You know, I was so sad. And it's amazing how people came together. In fact, that blanket got so big that I could not really. I mean, I have a picture of me, and it goes. I used to have a huge staircase, and it went down the staircase. You know, I spent time like putting it together.
I love this community,
and it raised awareness for mental illness and. Right. And the things that it transcends everything. You know, you said, you know, maybe it's off tangent. It's not, because I think that the fiber art and passion really transcends everything. It brings people together for so many subjects, and you can use it to create so many like, positive things.
If you think about it, like what we're working with, right? Like it's all so warm and cozy.
Yeah.
It brings you comfort. Like we are natural comfort bringers.
We are.
So like when we can pull it together and like involve community, and the thing is, it also connects us. You know, it brings us together, because there are so many people who are sitting home, whether you know by choice or not. You know. And they don't have that connection. So through the channels like yours and I, they can learn new skills. They can meet people that they would never meet. They can learn about other people's struggle, not necessarily just success, but also like all the difficulty of it.
Yeah.
And it inspires like so many people to try something new, to learn new skills. Like I did a series on my channel that I called The Secrets to Becoming a Better Knitter, where I was interviewing some like experts in the field, like people who teach, people who have books written, you know, like the gurus of knitting. And they were sharing their views on like what can make you a better knitter. And the first one that everybody was talking about is just allowing yourself to make a mistake, you know, allowing yourself just to try something without the fear of failure.
Yeah.
You know,
it's so important. And then on top of that, it comforts you. It has so many, you know, it takes your blood pressure down when you knit. It challenges your brain. So it's good to get
Shetland lace helps you with Alzheimer.
And Shetland lace, not just a lot of, you know, just challenging your brain.
Right.
And then at the end, you get something out of it.
That's what I love about it, because, you know, like I was talking about it with my husband, and I said, you know, like you're going to a movie or something, right?
Yeah.
We're going to a concert, and you're spending 2 hours there, and then you have nothing to show for it.
And you lost 2 hours.
Right. But like if I spend 2 hours watching a movie,
wow,
I'm gonna have a sock at the end of it, you know, to keep me warm for years.
Absolutely, you know, it's terrible. I now knit all the time, and if I don't knit or crochet, well, I've been knitting during the pandemic more than I crochet. Now I'm crocheting again. So anyway, I have something on my hook or on my needle all the time. In fact, when I drive, I have it next to me. Do you do that too at the stoplight? If it's too long of a
I don't need it at the stoplight necessarily, but like, you know, like driving kids around and they have their activities, or if I'm like going to the doctor office, or if I'm going, or plane rides. Oh my God, the plane rides became
it's
so
amazing.
wonderful.
I know.
You know, the further you fly, the better, the more you
It
can
takes
make.
only an hour and a half.
And like any delays, and people talk about like I used to get this comment so often, like, oh, you must be so patient. No, that's because I'm impatient that I have meeting in my hands.
That's exactly right.
It's about like giving you the tool to occupy yourself,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And it's a instant conversation striker.
It
you know,
is.
it's like if you're sitting and you're knitting on a bench, I bet with you, you're gonna have two people who come and ask you something. You
always, always. And it's the it's not also the people that you think, because it's not just knitters. How many times did I have people saying, "Oh my God, you remind me when I was a little, boy. My grandmother used to knit. She passed away, blah blah blah." But and then it takes them somewhere else. It just
No, it has all these memories. You know, it's like that people connect the craft with.
Yeah.
No, for sure. And it's like that's another thing that like I love about my channel. I feel so privileged to like become friends with these people and to have them open up about like their life and share their stories. Like I had people cry on my channel. I had people laugh on my channel. Yeah. And it's just so wonderful to have this connection and to have like this friendship with people,
It's pretty amazing. Well, Irina, I loved having you. Not too bad at all. I'm sorry, guys. I don't know exactly where, but our camera stopped. But I was saying how I was so happy to have Irina on my channel.
Next time you're gonna come to mine.
Next time I'm going to come to yours. But I think you should come back. I think we should do a crochet or knit along.
We can do a make along. So everybody can join.
Everybody can join. And I would also love to hear you more talking about your favorite yarns one day, your favorite knitting needles, stuff like that. I know it's a little, it's not as deep as what we had right now, but I would like to know. So I'm sure that a lot of people
I have a lot of favorites.
Right? I am sure you do. Like I saw you, so you came to my one of our knitting night, and you brought that thing. What do you call it?
It's Twister.
Twister. Yeah. I actually went and bought one. I'm expecting it. I was like, I want one. So we inspire each other. So I think that it would be cool to show that to you. But anyway, that was fantastic. I knew it was going to be. I'm not surprised. I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did.
And
you too. It was amazing. And I love you guys. And I see you next time. Bye.